How Christmassy is Australia? This is a question that I often get asked because so many people are concerned that Christmas just isn't the same. Well, to show you how Christmassy Australia actually is, I decided to do just that and show you how Christmassy Australia is by going to 12 different pubs and having a drink at each one. Can't get more Christmassy than that, right? But I made sure I was responsible and got the train in. And in true Queensland weather, it went from beautiful sunshine to pissing it down with rain. What better way to celebrate the weather at our first pub then by going to an English pub full of other idiots dressed up in Christmas attire. How Christmassy.
My name is Ross and this is my first drink tonight.
Now, if you're wondering what that first pint was, we decided to go for a Kilkenny.
I've already had half of it.
And no, I didn't get a flake with that head. But after watching some members of our party line their stomachs and check where the next good pub to go would be, because obviously we put no planning into this at all, we finished our drinks, admired the locals and their festive beards, and were asked by a group of lovely Islander gentlemen whether we could be part of and also take their photo. It was okay, but I wonder if this would have been any of us by the end of the night. Now, after the rain had stopped and we'd realised it was still only about 3:30 in the afternoon, we found another lovely little drinking hole overlooking the river. Even though it had started pissing it down again with much ferocity, it didn't stop us from tucking into our second drink. Which is probably a good time to introduce you to our second drinking buddy.
My name's Tim and this is my second pint.
Tim works in project management and enjoys tight shorts and no socks. Don't judge him too much, he's a good guy. But with the rain continuing to lash it down, we thought we'd continue our ad hoc planning and just see if we can't find the next closest place to have a drink. Inspired with how seriously everyone seemed to be taking the festivities, we thought we'd chance what seemed to be a lull in the rain for what turned out to be the longest journey between pubs in our 12 pub shenanigan. But of course it didn't stay dry for long, and it turned out to be as wet as it could ever be. We were wetter than Stevie Wonder's toilet seat. But would this stop us from getting our next drink in? Of course not, but these sketchy looking beers were brought by our third drinking buddy today.
My name is Pete and this is my third drink tonight.
Yes, I'm only drinking with Poms, but we're the ones that are feeling like we could do with a good old fashioned British Christmas piss up. And you can't get a much better view in Brisbane than under the Story Bridge, even if it was a Queensland sunny day that turned out to be in the middle of a storm. So after we'd mopped ourselves dry and left the place looking like a teenager's bedroom, we finished our drinks, and it turns out that when you leave Felons, there's a massive cliff that you have to wait for a little lift for. But once you get to the top, just take a look at that view. This is why you move to Brisbane, not to get rained on. Now, when you get to the valley, you're absolutely spoiled for choice by all of the places that look even worse when it's only about 5 in the afternoon. But to make things even worse, Pete only had thongs on, so had to buy some shoes so that he could get in, and the man with no socks had to buy some band-aids because they were starting to rub. But it is nice to know that there's a very low standard for dress code in the valley. Our next venue was a delightful little microbrewery that told us we only had 15 minutes to drink up before there was a Christmas party, which then allowed us to stumble on what I can only describe as the best looking place to drink bourbon in the entire Brisbane area. But of course it was Tim's round, so we didn't get to drink bourbon. And at 6 o'clock in the afternoon and only 3 drinks deep, it's probably a bit early for that too. Nevertheless, Pete had broken the seal and it was time to move on to our next venue, which turned out to be a delightful bar where things were looking a hell of a lot more Christmassy. And it turns out in Brisbane, if you want to find a place that feels very Christmassy, it's normally got the word hotel after it, and it seems to look a bit more what I describe as an English pub. But it turns out I was letting down the drinking culture of my new Australian lifestyle and my old British roots. And I was struggling to keep up with the pace of the 12 pubs of Christmas. Perhaps a change of venue might smarten things up, and in true subtropical fashion, it gets dark in Brisbane by about 7 o'clock. Now it turns out if you want a decent pint of Guinness in Brisbane, probably don't go to an Irish bar, but at least they kind of poured them correctly, and I only have myself to blame for slowing down my pace on a pub crawl. What was the reason for my poor form? Was it the fact that some places didn't feel as Christmassy as I'd wanted them to be? Was my whinging pom nature just manifesting itself in me turning into a big sook? Maybe I was worried about whether this guy had made it home alive. Perhaps I just needed to get out of this Irish bar and find a more Australian experience. Well, we're halfway done and I'm getting too lazy to move, so this place looks good enough. And true to form, it already felt more Christmassy with Santa buying some drinks at the bar, and Pete needed a wee again. But there were 2 major downsides to this place. Number 1, they served beer out of plastic cups, and number 2, we all felt that the beer tasted a bit like garlic. But the live music wasn't too bad. Where in the valley could we go to would give us that long-yearned Christmas spirit? Well, at least the patrons of Fortitude Valley were at least starting to Christmas me up with their delightful outfits. And then this place started to look promising with its twinkling fairy lights, pool tables, and $5 wet pussies. But it took me until this bar to realise that my biggest problem wasn't the fact that I was feeling un-Christmassy, it was the fact that I was drinking Englishy style beer. I should be sticking to Australian stuff like ginger beer, quite possibly the greatest invention since Goon of Fortune. But after taking far too long to decide that I probably shouldn't minesweep this drink, I kept feeling to myself, is there somewhere in the valley that just has that more of a Christmas spirit? And then we found this place, which not only had a decadent looking bar area, but also a rooftop microbrewery. How many breweries are there in the valley? Well, when this place sells a limited release raspberry and blackberry sour, you've got to give it a try after you've had those fruity drinks before, bringing up your vibe. Doesn't it look amazing? And I can tell you that the first sip was absolutely divine. But after a few sips of the 10th beer of the evening, I can tell you it did not go down so well, and I was starting to regret the fact that this place only really served pints. 10 out of 10 view though, and I would definitely come back here, just not after I'd had about 10 drinks, and I wouldn't be ordering one of these again. The boys were also regretting my choice, but eventually the drinks got finished and we ended up in a place that cost $4 for the privilege. Yes, the valley had started to charge us entry. And I wasn't sure if the decor in here was Christmassy or more of a permanent fixture. And you can't knock a place that does $3.50 basics on a Thursday with a free sausage sizzle. But at least Tim had got the memo and was no longer buying weird beers, and instead adopted for the best thing on an Australian night out, and that's the ginger beer. But 11 drinks in and I think the alcohol's definitely kicked in, and this doorman's wondering whether he wants to kick me out. Tim started being responsible and was already drinking water, but he says it doesn't count if you're also drinking alcohol. Now after a fair few hours of sitting down and drinking responsibly many different alcohols long into the evening, we decided that it was time to continue paying more money for entry, just so that we could dance as sad middle-aged men trying to relive our youths. Because isn't that what alcohol does to you? Ooh, that bar has a big fountain in it. Well, before you find out what we look like at our 12th drink, and if you feel inspired that you want to come and live your best life drinking the 12 pubs of Christmas in Australia, then you'll need to find out if you even qualify for a visa. Australia is one of those pesky countries that doesn't just let anyone in, and realistically the whole moving process was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life. To help you out and plan what you need to do next, speak to our friends True Blue Migration Services, and when you mention us, let them do the hard work of navigating the ever-changing Australian visa system, and use their free visa assessment service so they can tell you exactly what you need to do to realise your dreams down under. As the only Mara registered visa company we trust, and we're not the only ones as they have hundreds of 5-star Google reviews. You can even check them out if you need help falling asleep. In fact, they're so slick that if you decide to use them, they'll pretty much do all of the hard work for you in securing your visa for you and your family to live their best life. So what are you waiting for?
My name is Ross, and this is probably at least my 12th drink tonight.
So we'd finally completed the 12 pubs of Christmas, and I had learned a few things about my experience that evening. Yes, you can find some Christmassy elements at pub crawls in Australia, but it might not be the same level of Christmassy pub crawl where you've come from. Even when the weather is at its most terrible, it's only like that for a few minutes, and as long as you persevere, you're definitely not going to have it put a downer on your evening. But the most important aspect of going out and having fun at Christmas time is the people that you spend it with. Regardless of where you are or how Christmassy it feels, you're always going to have a good time if you do things responsibly with mates. And the craziest people that you're going to meet on a night out probably aren't Australians either. And if you're ever worried about what to drink in Australia, then ginger beer is always your friend. And despite the valley being mainly known for its nightlife, I always felt reasonably safe when walking around. They've had a good night, and I hope you've enjoyed our video so much that you want to watch what the rest of our life is like in Australia. See you next time.